Thank you, David. Good afternoon, everybody. We're in place names in Ireland this afternoon, and on your little giveaways I have provided the Townland, which is the essential address for your Irish ancestor. In other words, that's where he had his feet on a piece of dirt in the ground. An Irish place name can be found spelt in several different ways, in the original Gaelic, in various anglicised versions, and in Old English and in Latin. When researching your ancestors in Ireland, you need to be aware of the various land divisions, as records can be catalogued under various place names. The majority of Irish records for genealogists to research are arranged by locality, and most people within them are identified by the place name where they lived. The use of gazetteers, directories and maps, you'll be able to broaden your research and locate the townland in which your ancestors lived. This is going to be a pictorial session, because personally I think it's rather nice that when someone tells you about something and you get a little excited, it's rather nice to see where it actually came from. Some of this information you might well know, but I would like to think that I'm adding a little to it today, please. Ireland is divided into 4 provinces: Ulster, Connaught, Leinster and Munster. These provinces are divided up to cover the 32 counties of Ireland. Ulster covers 9 counties, which include Cavan, Donegal and Monaghan, but from 1921 the province of Ulster also covers the counties of Antrim, Armagh, Derry, Down, Fermanagh and Tyrone under Northern Ireland. So we will divide these areas up for you this afternoon. The 32 counties are divided into baronies, a land division which often corresponded to ancient tribal or clan boundaries. Barony boundaries cross county and civil parish boundaries. Each barony is further divided into parishes, these being known as the civil parishes. Each parish is made up of a number of townlands. The townland is the smallest geographical unit, and there are approximately 60,462 townlands in Ireland. A townland can be considered as the rural address of your ancestor. Sometimes you will hear someone say the 62,000 townlands. I don't think actually anyone's ever counted them. Your little piece of printout I've given you just says 60,000. But this document that I just read out says 60,462. So when you're looking, you will know that it is there. A diocese is an administrative unit in either the Roman Catholic Church or the Church of Ireland, administered by a bishop. The Poor Law Relief Act of 1838 called for the creation of administrative areas known as the Poor Law Unions for the purpose of a tax collection for the relief of the poor. This is the Oxford Dictionary's entry for a townland. Again, they say there are over 60,000 townlands in Ireland, constituting the smallest recognised administrative division. This is the baronies that I mentioned. Between 1600 and 1900, the barony was used extensively by the English administration. Catholic parishes were solely for ecclesiastical purposes and generally were larger than their Protestant counterparts. That's very important if you're researching Roman Catholic records. Now, for the lady that mentioned Roman Catholic records, this is John Grenham's 4th edition. It covers all the 32 counties in Ireland. It breaks them down into the diocese areas, which is a page that I've given you in your handout today, just to introduce those particular place names. It also records the birth, death and marriage records for what survives in each county in each parish. This book is available in the Auckland City Library, but I have only touched on the place names. I would suggest that you have a look at this book for all other reasons. The 3rd edition of John Grenham's Tracing Your Irish Ancestors has a section that relates, if you're looking for a parish name and you cannot find it, there's a section to the rear of the book that is really worth having a look at. I think this book was getting too big in the 4th edition, that it wasn't carried forward. Hence, I'm letting you know about that one. But I wanted to say something here at this point is to what John Grenham says about townlands. John Grenham is a very eminent genealogist for Irish research. This was very current after I organised my presentation for you, but I didn't want you to miss out on it. To foreigners and direct marketeers, Irish townlands can seem like something from Alice in Wonderland. Where in rural Ireland do people live? In a townland. What's a townland? It's a place where people in rural Ireland live. The recurrent complaint is that only the postman understands local place names. But why should that be a problem? A townland can be an acre or 1,000 acres. It can be named after geographical features or individual families or legends or just flights of fancy. My favourite examples of the latter are America and Liberty, two townlands in South Roscommon. The only certainty is that a townland is a rural area and that it is, or used to be, inhabited. Some good news if you're trying to find a particular townland is that their ambiguity and imprecision annoyed the English administrators of Ireland in the 1830s, so much that the Ordnance Survey set about nailing down the down things once and for all. They measured, mangled, distorted, and damaged the traditions they were dealing with, but like the good Victorians they were, they did it systematically. The first published version of their work, the 1851 Townlands Index. If you can identify a place in this publication, it will appear under the same spelling in the most latter state records. It's certainly true for Griffith's valuation, the most contemporary of the major sources. An inevitable amount of drift crept in over the following century. You can see why I wanted to share that. Excuse me. So now we have the Genealogical Atlas of Ireland. Please note here that it's the second edition, and as such I've put a note down the bottom for you to cover there. Can you see that from your place? Thank you. I've used County Limerick as an example here. You'll see the county parishes of Limerick. Excuse me just a moment, please. Since its publication in 1986, a new genealogical Atlas of Ireland has established itself as a key resource in Irish genealogical research. Now with the addition of maps detailing the location of Roman Catholic parishes in all 32 counties of Ireland and Presbyterian congregations in the 9 counties of Northern Ireland, this new second edition moves the book to the forefront of Irish genealogical research. Also, for the first time ever, this one volume contains a complete geographical picture of the 3 major religious denominations in Ireland during the middle years of the 19th century. This new second edition is not only invaluable for tracing your pre-1864 ancestors in church records, but also for locating your post-1864 ancestor in civil records. For this whole volume describes descriptions and maps of the parochial and civil administration divisions to which all major Irish records sources are linked. So here I'm showing you County Limerick. These are the civil parishes, and there are 130 names. These are the baronies, and there are 14 names and 5 dioceses. This is the Poor Law Union, and there are 8 new place names. These are the Roman Catholic parishes, and there are 65 names. All the maps that I just showed you for County Limerick are to the same scale. This, just to put a little bit of a picture on our talk today, is a townland, an old palace in Limerick, as in County Limerick. But it's nice to see something that you might not have actually accessed. I'm led to believe my family lived there. I yet have to prove it. So here we come again about the smallest division in Ireland, the townland. At the bottom of this particular slide, we're talking about the Ordnance survey completed in 1846 and the general alphabetical index to the townlands, towns, parishes and baronies of Ireland. This book is in the library here at Auckland, and it's commonly referred to as the Townland Index. This is what the book looks like, and Susan's here this afternoon, and Susan was just using it before with a little bit of direction. However, you will get home and say, well, you heard the book is in the library, and you'll say, well, I want to access those 60,000+ townlands, the 2,000 odd civil parishes, and the 329 baronies. This is the website I arrowed here, www.thecore.com/Sean Ruat. They're all online for you. There's a little extract I put in here from that particular volume. It's dated 1861, and the little bit that I wanted to point out was to change the names and boundaries of townlands when straightening of river sources, reclamation from the sea, or other circumstances have rendered it necessary. The case, however, will not be numerous, and no inconvenience or error from this cause need arise if all the precautions required by the Act of Parliament be, as they doubtless will be, duly observed. Now that was to say there would be no changes to the boundaries. And I put that in because by the time we get to 1901, there are some changes. Here's an example out of the volume. We will refer to it as the Townland Index. You will note here that this heading says the townlands. This is your Ordnance survey map, your townland, the statute of acreage, the county, your barony, your civil parish, not your ecclesiastical parish, your poor law union, and if the census, but some extracts have survived, that would be the page entry in the record for your census for 1851. Now, very few extracts survive for 1851. However, if yours did, or you think it did, that is worth noting. This entry here I have put in to show you, if you were looking for a place called Doon, don't just pick the first one that you saw. You have to work harder at it. So if you had a place named Doon, you think, oh great, but then keep looking up and down, there's several places called Doon. And this one is by parishes. So when you're going through the book, and remember you've got 60,000 or 60,462 townlands, the next section is parish. So if the name that you had wasn't a townland and it's a parish, you can read across the same headings to put it in the genealogical atlas and come back to your second edition, and all the maps like I gave you for Limerick as an example, you will be able to put together. It is very easy, but it's the old story. It's easy when you know how. This one here is the third section in the Townland Index by barony. But it's rather interesting if you come down to the bottom of your page. There's a lovely little précis of information, depending how far you want to go to learn about your area, just down here summarised at the bottom of the page. Now, this is Sean Ruat's site, here the one with the arrow, and this is what you'd find when you went online, and you'd be so excited, you'd put the townland name in as it's on your certificate, and generally the New Zealand certificates weren't actually spelt the same as the place name in Ireland was. Just very briefly, a lady showed me a certificate and it had Emily, E-M-I-L-Y. The person said my family came from Emily. Never found it, but she had Tipperary. If she'd gone in here and put Emily, it wouldn't have come up. So if you drop this down here where it says must match exactly, and you come into this area here, says anywhere, there are a couple of other options, and she'd put Emily in, it would have come up Emily, E-M-L-Y, in County Tipperary. So this one is your 60,000 names, your parish names and your barony names that you can use at home. I just wanted to show you what it looked like, because you do get excited, But you must watch these little entries here. That is a beautiful site. We actually have to thank the late Frank Broderick, who put that online. He called himself Sean Ruad, and I think that's like Red John. So maybe Frank was a red-haired chap and loved the name Sean.
It's called that.
So I've put it here, along with a couple of other websites that I'll leave up there just for a moment, that you could use online at home. But you'll notice I've put Sean Ruad's site as the first entry. It is much easier to use. So if I may move on from there, I can come back to that at the end of the session if you like. This is, get his name right, Patrick Weston Joyce has been described as a historian, writer, music collector, and an outstanding authority on place names, and author of many books, Origin and History of Irish Names of Places, were published in 3 volumes, Volume 1, 1869, Volume 2, 1875, and Volume 3 in 1913. There's beautiful works in this man's book, and this is what he said. I think you can see that from there, or do you want me to read it out? Just very quickly, this is the first book ever written on the subject. In this respect, I am somewhat in the position of a settler in a new country who has all the advantages of priority of claim, but who purchases them dearly, perhaps, by the labour and difficulty of breaking his way through the wilderness and clearing his settlement from primeval forest and tangled undergrowth. And all he was writing was the place names. I do like that. I hope you enjoyed that. To make it a little easier if you can't access Patrick Weston Joyce's volumes, you can here access Samuel Lewis's books. He has 2 volumes. Samuel Lewis first published his 2 volumes of the Topographical Dictionary of Ireland in 1837. This esteemed work gives us a unique insight into the early 19th century life within Irish counties and towns. Arranged alphabetically by place, village, parish, or townland, it provides a comprehensive description of all Irish localities as they existed at the time of publication. Lewis gives us details about every parish, town, and village in Ireland. Those volumes are available in the library here. And then you could look at the CD. Everyone likes a CD because it's fast, but it's very nice to pick up which of those 2 volumes you desire to find your family. They're very well presented, and they look old worldly as opposed to just looking at something on a CD. This is an entry from one of Lewis's volumes. I picked it because it was an area that I was looking for in Limerick. I won't go into great detail there, but if it was your parish, there's a huge amount of information here. The same with this parish, which is the picture I showed you, which was Old Palace. The parish is called Gren, but sometimes it might not have an E on the end, and sometimes it might be the word green. If it's like the chap earlier was saying, they anglicise them. This is a beautiful townland map book. It's in the NZSG library at the FRC in Panmure. It was created by the Inner City Trust of Derry in Northern Ireland. This here is all the fiche for the particular parish I wanted. You can see at the top here this time, this is how we're spelling Gren. And this was a little map that was provided. So those places, this is the parish of Gren, and there's all the little townlands here. Where they couldn't fit the word in, they've numbered it out the side. That's a set of fiche. Some are in the National Library in Wellington, and some are in the NZSG Library in Auckland. I've never found them anywhere else. If anyone does find, I would love to know, because between the National Library and the NZSG, we don't actually have the full set, and they're not available anymore. When I spoke about the parish of Limerick, and I mentioned Emly, this is all those 130 parishes, civil parishes in Limerick. This here is Tipperary. This little parish here is Emly. Now the diocese on your paper, the Diocese of Emly and Cashel, takes in this area here. So if you were looking for your Limerick record, this is my parish here, or you were looking for your Tipperary record in this little area here, you won't find it in the church. You'll find it at the Tipperary Heritage Centre, because the Bishop of Emly and Cashel, he held on to the records for a while. And then genealogists like us, there was pressure brought to bear, but he gave them to the Tipperary Heritage Centre, and now you pay to get your records. However, it's cheaper than paying your tax at the airport, and the ladies at the Tipperary Heritage Centre ensure that they're giving you all the information that they've indexed and catalogued now over the last 5 or more years. But that's important, that little piece. If your parish is on a border with the next county, always look in the next county. So this record here, very quickly, was an 1821 census for Limerick City and County for the Ryan families. Now my good friend John Grenham says you cannot throw a stone in Tipperary without hitting a Ryan. And I happen to have a Ryan. So I didn't give up. I went tracing my Spellman family and found that this delightful chap that put this together, I'm indebted to Noel Murphy, he put my Mr. Spellman right here. He didn't leave it off the family, he put it here. So was that my connection of the Spellmans marrying the daughter or the cousin or the niece? But more importantly, it put him in a place in 1821. Now this is the same little map I showed you earlier for the parish of Gren without our little e and all the townlands. But this is 1821 spellings I've highlighted here, taken from the previous slide where Mr. Noel Murphy put the Ryans in place and that time. But look at the different spellings. I hope that stands out. So if you were looking for those spellings on the little map in the Genealogical Atlas, the 2nd edition, you wouldn't find them spelt exactly the same. But a little bit of logic when you're a genealogist, you grab it and you think, well, it's pretty close to that spelling there. Is it the same place? And then you go and get a map and you find it is. So again, it's our little place names. They're out there for you to find, but they just want to draw you in slowly. That being the Ordnance Survey map, and there's a beautiful series here in the library. There's the barony name of Coonar, and here's my little place names. You won't see them very well here, but all the parishes are in capital letters as well, and then you've got all the little townlands in between. However, if you don't view it very well there on that Ordnance Survey map, this is Bartholomew's map, but he calls his the 1/4-inch maps. And here you'll find all your place names. Here's the, again using Limerick as an example, there's the city of Limerick, and you can come out and find all your place names within a radius to each other. And here's your other boundary lines. Those are beautiful. They're at the NZSG, FRC and Panmure. You put your hands on them, colour seems to bring it more to life, but they're full of names. But then you would get those spellings. I wanted to introduce this little parish. The 1821 census survives. The most beautiful little book, but I couldn't find my family there. It doesn't matter. It's full of place names. And part of the introduction to it, it says, the townlands in the census are listed numbers 1 to 75, but in fact there are only 73 townlands. So they merged 2. If you were remembering, we looked at Lewis's topographical dictionary, and I said, look at your volumes and you'll get your little picture. Some of those entries will say this townland was absorbed into this parish, or we took 3 townlands out and they were absorbed over time into this parish. So your ancestor might have a document that says he's in the parish of Crosselough, and he gives a little name and you think, well, hang on, there's only 73 townlands. What is one of the other 2 that were merged? I only put that in there as an example. Again, you look around. Whatever are the parishes that border across the loch. That's a beautiful little book, and it's in the Auckland City Library here. Again, I wanted to put in something, just a little bit of colour. Those are place names. That little sign was on the side of an old mill in Kevin, but as you can see, it says Milltown, but it's got Killashandra, which is a place I fell in love with, but yet to find if my ancestors lived there. This is the Irishness that sometimes comes out. And, never assuming anything, you have the Tithe Allotment Act was passed in 1823. The Tithe Allotment Assessment, I made a little note here, but you can read it there, and I'll summarise by saying, of particular importance with the tithes books is that they provide details of land and ownership, occupations and valuations for individual holdings under the names of townlands. I've actually put up here the National Library on the top line here. Even though I've put the census for National Archives, I beg your pardon, for Ireland, on the National Archives website, you will find the tithe allotment records. You will also find that when you go into the records, that you can download the page of the original entry. And this is what it would look like. Again, I've used County Limerick as an example. This is County Limerick in our parish of Pallasgreen. These are all the townlands. But if you started at the front of the book and all the films are here in the Auckland City Library, you would be working your way through them all, and at the very rear you would find this index. But it was worth going through to have a look at all the entries. And this is an example. This here says it's the Diocese of Cashel and Emly. Maybe they're going alphabetically. And it's in the parish of Pallasgreen. This is the townland, this is a townland, and this is a townland here. There's all your occupiers and their land, what it was being classed, and how they were going to pay their taxes on it. But the point being, here's all these townlands. Now, in the 1823 to 1838, when they were finished being recorded, the townlands might be spelt slightly differently. However, like the map I showed you, you grab it and go off to prove that it's yours. Don't just get put off, as Patrick Weston Joyce said. He was fighting his way through the undergrowth, so to speak, to get these spellings out there for us. So we say here, the official spellings of many townlands differ from those in everyday use, and pronunciation is sometimes needed in identifying the official name of a townland. The vast majority of townlands containing only a few scattered houses and no villages or towns of any sort. Well, let me show you. This is a beautiful set of 40 volumes, and this is the index. So if you went into the library either here or at the NZSG at Panmure, and you picked up your little book, and the first thing we all do is we go to the index, and it's not there, and you get disappointed. Believe me, when you pick up this and carry this large book around, you will find it's the Ordnance Survey Memoirs of Ireland. It's an index of people and places. The memoirs are a uniquely detailed source for the history of the northern half of Ireland immediately before the Great Famine. They were written in the 1830s to accompany the 6-inch Ordnance survey maps, an incredibly comprehensive index. And a little example, this is part of an index. That index led me to volume 40. As you can see there, it's 1834 to 1838. I don't know them all offhand to quote, but volumes 38 and 39 cover County Donegal. If you're researching in Donegal, these are a gem. This one is classed as South Ulster and has a little bit of this parish of Cavan I'm going to show you here. And why I wanted to show you its Drumlomond parish is that it mentions here under manufacturers and mills these little townland names. Now I only picked that page because My reference was for my surname O'Reilly, and it had the reference here to the property of Mr. O'Reilly at Rockfield. Now, if that was my Mr. O'Reilly, I'd be incredibly happy, but I'd also want to read about what on earth is going on in this particular parish as well, and read about all the little townlands. So those are 40 volumes in the library. They're mainly the Northern Ireland parishes, but that one is for South Ulster. Again, we're coming back to townlands and prefixes of the spelling of townlands. The name Bally will crop up quite a lot because it means town. And you will see here, when we move along, this one's using the term loch. I might just say loch, but it's listed as Ballyloch. So bear in mind that word Bally, sometimes B-A-I-L-I-E, when you get a little stuck for the place you're looking for. I love maps. Maps tell you a story. The first time I picked this book up, the late Karen Kalapulu, I just bought it for the Auckland City Library. I thought, what did you buy a paper landscape for? Let me please have a look. And I fell in love with this book. The earliest 6-inch Ordnance survey mapping of Ireland was undertaken in 1824 to determine townland boundaries and acreages as a means of equalising local taxation. Thanks to the zeal and vision of a small group of military officers and the devoted labours of many soldiers and civilians, the survey soon evolved into an all-purpose cartographic record, making Ireland the first country in the world to enjoy the benefit of published maps depicting its entire territory at a scale large enough to show every house and every field. That is a paper landscape. If you're just looking at books, pick that one up. I had a little more, but I'm watching the time. This book is in the Auckland City Library. It's older place names. A selection of place names found in the 17th to the 20th century, records including modern parishes, poor law unions, and registrars' districts. A little example here. Again, I focused on County Limerick to try and keep a story that you can say, well, if that was my county, this is how I would be putting it together. A beautiful little book. Online, oh, excuse me one moment. In the back of that book is a lovely glossary. The glossaries would be helping you with where I've used the example Ballyloch. This is online, and it's a Gaelic place name website. It's very nice if you want to go back and look into your Gaelic spelling. And I've made it a little bigger for the lower part of this part here of the demonstration. And I'll just focus, it says 32 counties, 61,223 townlands. So we're now between our 60,000 and our 60,462. 3,508 electoral districts, 2,570 civil parishes, 872 towns, 345 baronies, 122 villages, 106 sub-townlands, and 39 fields. I've added the fields for a little part at the end of this demonstration. But the website I have highlighted there quite large. Very nice to go on. May only take it if you put your Emily in instead of Emily. How does that sound as a nice example? Now for the people that have research in Northern Ireland. Aren't you just lucky? These are for the Ulster Counties, these 8 volumes, County Down, Antrim, Armagh and Fermanagh. This is a major series on the place names of Northern Ireland, concentrates on townland names. And I've actually put the website up here. I think if I look very hard enough, Northern Ireland Place Name Project. But it's always nice to have an example. So for the people that have Fermanagh research, this is for you. But not necessarily, you could use it for your county as well. The study of place names provides a revealing window on the land and its people. This major series on the place names of Northern Ireland concentrates on townland names. Early spellings of the name discussed have been abstracted from historical sources, and these provide the evidence to reconstruct the original form of the name and trace its development down to modern times. This particular volume on Fermanagh covers a large civil parish with most lies to the east of Fermanagh, but a small portion of which is in West Tyrone. Again, it's watching where one parish borders another, but in this case, it's one county bordering up against another. Well, this is a townland in the parish of Kildress in County Tyrone. This particular book, compiled by the Derry Youth and Community Workshop under the direction of Brian Mitchell, is in the NZSG FRC. It's full of townland maps for Armagh, Donegal, Londonderry, or Derry if you prefer, and Tyrone. It gives a list of all those townlands in that parish, and that was the townland map. But you could find it online. But finding it online looks perfectly all right like that. But wouldn't it have been nice to have got the map that puts them all in that parish? You can look at that as a parish map and see where your townlands lie in conjunction to each other. This is the first volume in a local history studies. It's at the NZSG FRC, and we've got the second book on order. This volume contains 8 essays by experienced local historians who describe the development of their townland over the last 400 years and more. The story of each townland is presented in a format which demonstrates how that most valuable resource, the extensive range of sources available in the Public Record Office of Northern Ireland, can be used in a study for each and every townland in the province. That book is definitely worth putting your hands on if you've got a townland in Ulster. However, if you don't have a townland in Ulster and you've got one in Leinster, this is why it's important to know your provinces. Leinster's a province, but look at the counties that are in Leinster. So if you just picked it up and it said Townlands of Leinster and you didn't know, well, that's not mine, you would get a very delightful surprise if you were searching in any of those counties, because this is a little example of the index. There's your area and there's your townlands. These are your townlands. And I'll put the whole lot up because that book's available here at the FRC in Panmure. When I say the FRC, that's the New Zealand Society of Genealogists Library. But not to be left out if you're only visiting the Auckland City Library. Ulster's rich and diverse cultural heritage is reflected in its place names, which have their origins in many languages, including Irish, Scots, English, Old French and Old Norse. This book remedies the long-standing need for a reliable and up-to-date dictionary of Ulster place names, supplying the derivations and meanings of around 1,300 names in the 9 Ulster counties. I'd like to finish by reading, "This is the most complete guide to Irish place names published in modern times. It explains the origins and derivations of the names of over these 3,000 cities, towns, villages, and physical features. The late Deirdre Flanagan was one of Ireland's leading authorities on place names." A beautiful book. And this one, well, this is Patrick Mackay. He calls his a dictionary of Ulster place names, but it covers the 9 counties of Ulster, not just Northern Ireland or not just Donegal, Monaghan or Cavan. Ulster's rich and diverse cultural heritage is reflected in its place names, which have their origins, as he says, in many languages including the Irish, Scots, English, Old French and Old Norse. He says this book remedies the long-standing need for a reliable and up-to-date dictionary of Ulster place names of around 1,300 names, as he says too, in the 9 Ulster counties. But unlike the late Deirdre's book, this is what Patrick gives us. So we can use a little poetic license here. We have County Down here, We have Fermanagh, we have Down, County Down, but we have Shercock in County Cavan. We also have a delightful little map here. This is the explaining of Shercock. And not just to stop there, here's another delightful little entry, again from County Cavan, from Tullyco. Oh, and I should say here, look at this date. And to finish off for the ladies that like the flowers, this is a lovely little entry here. We've got another one in County Cavan. This one's Derry, Tyrone, Armagh, down here in County Cavan. Comes up here and tells you Templeport near Tullyho. That is a beautiful little book. So Patrick's got a little artistic with his, more than what Deirdre did, but don't be stopped from using Deirdre's book. And that was a little map that was part of that book. And now we have Sean. Well, I've always loved someone with the name Sean. So what does Sean say? He says, this book is for you. I like that. Names of towns, villages and townlands are given county by county in their anglicised form, the Gaelic form, and their meaning. So we had enough little meanings with Patrick's book. But Sean says, this book is for you. So listen to Sean. And now what do we have? Tipperary, 100 years ago. Beautiful little book. I found this at the FRC in Panmure. I was looking for a place name called Drumineer. It had been spelt at least 3 ways before I got to the spelling here. It borders my little Tipperary map that I put up against Limerick. I was looking for my family here. So what do we find? Afterwards, after I discovered my place name, I find a little book, and I've only put up this page, Drum, 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 Drum. Now, if I'd had that earlier, well, using all those directories, but Drumineer doesn't actually come strictly alphabetical with Drom, so you need to keep going. But this was a worthwhile little book. Again, it was in the library here. Oh, and for County Longford, you're in luck. This beautiful book is in the library here and at the FRC. Now this section is County Longford, residents prior to the famine. And that's a parish with all its townlands. But it says they can't find the location of this little place here. Oh, goodness me. Did it go next door? Did it disappear? I went into the tithe allotments that I've mentioned previously, and I found 2 families were living there in this parish in 1833. So now you would need a really good map to see what happened to the parish. Because this was before the famine. So before the famine, you didn't have, I'll rephrase that, before the famine you had the tithe allotment books to look at your spellings. To coincide with that County Longford book, here's the one, Survivors of the Great Famine. But I will only focus on the townlands. But if you were looking for your family, these are 2 beautiful books to put alongside each other to say, well, did my family survive, or what happened to my family, and what townland are they now in? Both are full of townland names. The returners of land, or return of owners of land. This book here, the records were started taken in Ireland in 1875. The findings of a survey, Return of the Owners of Land, was published in Dublin in 1876. Only those who owned 1 acre or upwards were given into account into the survey. The records were compiled by the clerks for the Poor Law Union for every parish in Ireland in 1875. The returns show the names of the owners in alphabetical order for each county under their province, the address of the owner, the extent and valuation of his holdings, and the amount of the valuation. This land valuation is only 10 years from the completion of Griffith's valuation. Perhaps a generation later, or the same people can appear in both surveys. It is very easy to use. It's indexed under province, but then the provinces are broken up into counties. But I've highlighted one here. This person's address, the address of the owner of the land, is in England. So when you find your entry, don't just assume, I use that as an example, just don't assume that your person lives on that land. That was rather an important item. 21 books have been produced. There's 32 counties. The latest is County Longford. I use this as an example because it had a beautiful coloured cover. They're usually referred to a history and society of a particular county. They're available in the libraries both here and at the FRC, and they're really worth reading because they bring you from right up to date, from the times that we've been covering here right up to date. This is a general topographical index. It's the census of Ireland from 1901. Now, we covered the Townland Index that was 1851, and it said there would not likely be any changes to some boundaries. Well, this little book, and it's been published on CD and a set of fish. It brings in your district electoral division. And there's some little notes here towards the end about the boundary changes. And it says, the townlands as shown in this volume represent these denominations and their areas as they stood on the 31st of March 1901. In the case of the County of Galway, however, the areas shown are those in use prior to the last survey by the Ordnance Survey Department. This information regarding the revised areas not being available before the dispatch of the manuscript to the printer. The revised areas will be found in the census book for the county. We don't have the census book for the county, which is rather unfortunate. It was destroyed in the Four Courts fire. Pursuant to the Ordnance Survey Map Adjustment of Boundaries, Order 1899 of His Majesty's Privy Council in Ireland, the parish boundaries will not in future be shown on the ordnance maps when revised, except in the county boroughs and urban districts. In future, also townlands of the same name, which formerly appeared separately, though divided only by a parish boundary, and which are given in this volume as separate townlands, will be shown on the new survey maps as one townland. Now that's dated the 29th of April 1904. But I want you to note, it's rather interesting, it was Robert E. Matheson was the Registrar General. I've put this up here. It's a 1901 census in Limerick, and it's got your headings across the top here. And this is a particular family that's living in the parish of Temple Bredon in the townland of Garrydoulis. Now, if you put a map up, I'm not sure that you've known this, but if you were to click on Garrydoulis or click on Temple Bredon, you would find all the townland names in that parish. And if you clicked on Garrydoulis, you'd find all the neighbours living next door to this family of Graces. But it was mainly the townlands I wanted to tell you about under each parish name. Because if you went into the townland and the spelling wasn't quite what you're looking for, on this occasion, you could use the parish name to go into your townland. Here's our Robert Matheson, surnames in Ireland. Now you might be thinking, well, why would you use surnames when this is a place names talk? Well, I want to show you, please, there are 530 names of registrars' districts in this volume, with the corresponding names of the unions in which they are situated. So here you have your registrars' districts, and here you have your unions. And that's in a book on surnames of Ireland. Any book that you pick up that's got a place name in it, it's worth investigating why they've recorded the place name.
What was the author of that book?
Yes, Robert Matheson. I'll just go back one. It's Surnames in Ireland by Matheson. But it's Sir Robert Matheson. It actually started off as recordings of surnames. A special report in 1906 was published. Now, in your little handout today, I've put those registration district names, because if you found that name and you were trying to tie it into a barony, a parish name, or a townland name, it's a poor law union name. So that's on your map that's at the back of your little handout. It's introducing those registration districts and the poor law union. I found this online, so if you went online and Google perhaps for registration districts, you might find a printout similar. Here we have the townlands and poor law unions. Now, this chap in 1997, George B. Handren. He published a book, Townlands and Poor Law Unions. It was a reprint of a poor law union pamphlet that was initially produced in 1885 by the General Register Office in Ireland. It has an introduction and 6 appendices relating to Irish genealogical research. But this is what you would find in that particular book. It's on CD here in the library. That is the same book, but it's a table of the contents. Now, this is my latest theme. I can't stand here and tell you about place names if I don't investigate them myself. I had a little name and I wanted it badly, and it didn't show up. This part I will call Townland sub-denominations. Within the official townlands, there are smaller subdivisions such as field and farm names known to the local people. But our generations are gone, or else they emigrated here to New Zealand. There are also small communities within townlands, not large enough to be towns. These communities have unique names and may only include a few houses. So I'll be very quick here and say these sub-denominations within a townland, and I put an example for County Limerick, they're not listed in the 1851, which is our Townland Index, the 1871 and the 1901 Townland Indexes. Sub-denominations may, however, be found in official records such as civil registration or on the Ordnance survey maps of Ireland. For this reason, examining the manuscript index to the original 6-inch to the mile Ordnance survey maps may be the quickest method of determining in which townland, civil parish and county an obscure name or a place name is located. It is not uncommon for an immigrant to identify with one of these small parcels of ground rather than the townland name. Now, I'm not quite sure if I put up a piece about Patrick, so if I could just finish here, please. This is a note in this beautiful book by Patrick Lynch. I love him. He says, "I like local history, and field names are a very important part of our local history. I have been interested in place names and their origins for a long time, probably for most of my life. My earliest recollection of an awareness of place names goes back to about 1945, when as a young boy I was helping my late grandfather, who was also Paddy Lynch, to plant cabbage in the garden at our home farm in Broomfield, Colin. It was a warm sunny day and we were sitting on a grassy bank having a drink of buttermilk, which was a very popular drink in those days. There was a very striking wood-topped hill a couple of miles away to the east. I don't recollect if I asked him about the name of the hill, or if he preferred the information. He told me that the hill was called Bellinaragriga. It was many years afterwards that I found out that the name comes from the Irish name Bally na Carriga, meaning rocky place or townland. For some reason, the name seems to have made a big impression on me and seems to have initiated my interest in the names and places and their meanings. Most of my working life, he says, was spent travelling around the counties of Meath, Louth, Cavan and Monaghan. And that was his entry into this beautiful part of a book about field names. I wanted to share that with you because the guy's passion is in this book. And if you were looking for a name that doesn't appear anywhere else, think of townland sub-denominations. 1659. The spellings are not exactly the same back in 1659. This was a record of property for taxation purpose, and it's been referred to as William Pender's census for 1659. I want to show you one little spelling here, and the reason I chose these pages, there's a second one to follow here, was the spelling here for our Gary Doulis place. It's popped up under one of these entries down here. Oh, it was on this page, but it's showing you this page here, where here it is, Gary Doulis, spelled slightly differently, but enough that you would recognize it. However, it says it's in this parish. And by the time we get to 1901, it's in a parish of its own. How am I going for time, David? Do you want me to wrap up? Are you happy? I have got just a couple more slides to go, but thank you. Right. Well, I won't go on too much here, but this is the Civil Survey of Ireland, 1645, I think, to 1654, if that's what I've got recorded there. And I will close, but that is worth having a look at for place names. You might say, well, how did I get back to 1645? However, it's people and place names. And this is a little bit in that book, The Barony in County Louth. But I will finish here by quoting again my favourite Irish genealogist, John Grenham. He said, "We love the places because they are where we come from, where the people we belong to are at home. The way the land is divided, the peculiar county, parish and townland borders embody much more of human and social geography than economic or physical. There are intense allegiances, centuries old and still in force as ever, to townlands, parishes and counties. Very rarely to the idea of Ireland divorced from the localities it should be added. At the time of the famine, English observers lamented the reluctance of even the most destitute to abandon their home place, and emigration was known as the White Death. As for many immigrants, their home place was a parish or a county, really the country as a whole." And I thought, what most appropriate place to finish on, a place name for a cemetery. And on that note, that was my last paper, so I hope I have not made you late. Thank you very much.